I'm Nyle DiMarco. I co-directed Deaf President Now.
And I'm Guggenheim, and I co-directed Deaf President Now as well. A coincidence, we both did that, yeah.
So Deaf President Now is a story about a civil rights movement that is very unknown. The hearing world hasn't known about this for 36 years. It actually follows 4 deaf students who led essentially an angry mob to work to achieve a deaf president at the world's only deaf university. They fought to have one appointed after 124 years of hearing paternalism.
Davis, what draws you to a project and what drew you to this one?
Well, I want to be inspired, always. And when Nyle brought this project to my company, I just couldn't believe I didn't know about it. I grew up in Washington, D.C., miles away from Gallaudet. I knew about Gallaudet, but I didn't know about this story. And right now, during this political time, to have a story about young people coming together and taking their power back, that's a story I want to watch. And so Nyle and I teamed up to see if we could do this together.
Were there any moments with your interview subjects talking about the expectations of the past and their generational trauma that moved you?
I think obviously, all of them had really moving stories that I was able to really relate to, but I think Tim's grandfather was the one that touched me the most. He really had given up his own identity in order to assimilate to a hearing society that expected less of him. This was a man who received 3 degrees and had gone to Columbia University. I think to be able to tell that story was really important. We see his grandfather, telling his grandson essentially to, keep quiet. And it's very shocking that, Tim stood strong in his beliefs and, stood up for change. But I think a big part of that was that he had seen the generational impact and knew that he deserved better. That was incredibly powerful to me because it does speak to my own experience of my parents advocating for themselves and really leading by example and showing me that I could do the same. I hope that this film inspires other deaf children out there and gives them, I think that light that says, be proud of who you are. You can do anything you want.
The sound design of the film plays so interestingly with the deaf experience and the hearing experience. Talk to me about what you both hope to communicate with the sound design in the film.
Well, it's interesting because I invited Nyle to the mix, and he's like, why would I go? But it's the same the other way, which is I'm watching rich conversations between Nyle and the DPN4 that I don't understand. So this is a movie that really depended on both of us to tell the story equally. He could speak so well about the deaf experience, and I could help along with the hearing experience. One of the discoveries was, it's like, what if we put that audience in that same position, where we yank the audience into an experience where they feel like they're deaf? And what if we yank the audience, and perhaps deaf people, yank them into an experience where they feel like they have to live in a hearing world? And the film does some adventurous things, I would say, to shift the perspective very radically. And it couldn't have been done without both of us doing it.
And I couldn't agree more. Just to add to that, we talked so much about the idea of visual noise, where we spend so much time building elements for hearing people to be able to really see the noise the way that deaf people experience it, from the drum beats or from scenes where you're essentially viewing the world through deaf eyes. As Davis said, I do think it really yanks that audience into the deaf experience beautifully.
Nyle's brother who's deaf is a DJ, and there are these incredible clubs where his brother is DJing, and it's all about vibration and pressure, and it's a world that I couldn't even begin to fathom.
Absolutely. And truly, high bass, with house music and electronica is really what works. If you ever want to come see a deaf DJ, you know where to find him.
That's amazing. Yeah, in the film, the visual noise representation was so striking, and the conversation around rhythm and how much that also fueled the protests.
It's all Nyle's insistence that for too long, the deaf story has been told by hearing people. And Nyle's insistence is this story needs to be told from a deaf perspective.
Yeah, agreed. I do think this story is very dear to the deaf community. And so we sort of had an obligation. When I first worked with Davis on this, I wanted to approach this from a place of care and love. And I wanted to be able to watch this at the end and say, that's the movie we always wanted to make.